On Friday, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. suspended his independent presidential campaign. I mean, he started his run as a Democrat, even after being photographed conspicuously with Roger Stone, who is the kind of guy, and I think I said this at the time, like, this smells wrong. Like, this smells like one of Stone's typical rat F situations. And I feel like we're at this point where eventually, hopefully, we get some reporting on this, but that feels very likely because he has now dropped out RFK Jr. and endorsed Donald Trump. They appeared together at a campaign event on Friday in Arizona. Now, RFK says he'll suspend his campaign, but he's removing or working to remove his name from only the battleground state ballots because I don't know if you can tell, but this guy, despite being completely insane, also has an enormous ego. So he still wants to run up the numbers in other states, but in terms of the battleground states, he wants to be able to give Trump an easier path. Here he is speaking in Arizona, announcing that he's going to be throwing his support behind Trump.
Months ago, I promised the American people that I would withdraw from the race if I became a spoiler. A spoiler is someone who will alter the outcome of the election but has no chance of winning.
Thank you.
In my heart, I no longer believe that I have a realistic path to victory in the face of this relentless, systematic censorship and media control. So I cannot in good conscience ask my staff and volunteers to keep working their long hours or ask my donors to keep giving when I cannot honestly tell them that I have a real path to the White House. Furthermore, our polling consistently showed that by staying on the ballot in the battleground states, I would likely hand the election over to the Democrats with whom I disagree on the most existential issues: censorship, war, and chronic disease. Oh, I want everyone to know that I am not terminating my campaign. I am simply suspending it and not ending it.
Great. Thank you.
My name will remain on the ballot in most states. If you live in a blue state, you can vote for me without harming or helping President Trump or Vice President Harris. In red states, the same will apply. I encourage you to vote for me. And if enough of you do vote for me, and neither of the major party candidates win 270 votes, which is quite possible, in fact,
straightforward message.
Today our polling shows them tying at 269 to 269. And I could conceivably still end up in the White House in a contingent election. But in about 10 battleground states where my presence would be a spoiler, I'm going to remove my name. And I've already started that process and urge voters not to vote for me.
Okay.
It's with a sense.
So he's going to try to do that, right?
Bit convoluted.
Yeah, I don't think that was
deliver it so well.
We're at 269. It's the premise of the movie with Kevin Costner, swing vote.
Yeah, we're gonna do a swing vote situation. Kevin Costner and I'm in the Kevin Costner.
You know what's
role.
funny is, like, I believe him that he doesn't want to like throw the election to the Democrats. You know what he could have done, like, to make sure the Republicans won, is just ran as a normal Democrat using the Kennedy name, but immediately ran to the right as this insane anti-vax candidate. That's I'm so anti-war that I love the Republicans. Oh, and by the way, I support Israel more than Trump and Biden.
I mean, Trump is now running as, we'll get to this later, but he just put out an ad this morning, the most just fear-mongering, pro-war on terror, Iran is the greatest threat ever, and the Democrats are leading Iran to being the superpower, with bombs and explosions in his advertisement that he put on Twitter. He's back on Twitter now. Like, how is he? You have the same opinions of him as him on war, I guess, RFK Jr., which means unfettered support for Israel as it commits a genocide, but also no support for Ukraine because this is more about letting strong men do what they want in the case of Putin and Netanyahu, not about some sort of principle. In fact, it's the opposite of that. But, you know, the Kennedy family is pretty disgusted to have their name be associated with the Trump campaign because, I mean, say what you want about the Kennedys, but they have been consistently Democrats. Like, that's a part of the whole brand for the most part. I mean, you had Maria Shriver was married to Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? And he was a Republican candidate, but he's a lib Republican. A lib Republican in California. So they were okay with those kinds of politics. But the RFK also used his father's, RFK Jr., in a Super Bowl ad that caused a stir with the family, basically just used the exact same ad that his father had used in his campaign, some of the other eerie similarities with 1968, and just slapped the junior on top of it and hoped to create some nostalgia for people so that they might vote for him.
And it didn't work, by the way.
Why he was an independent candidate when he left the Democratic primary, became an independent, right? A lot of the data showed that he might have been hurting Biden more than Trump during that time period when he was an independent after, once the general election rolled around, because he was at the point where Biden was dropping out. A lot of the polls had him at around 10%. Then when Harris got into the race, RFK was down to 4 almost immediately. So it showed, I guess, that people the double hater dynamic was benefiting him a lot, and Harris doesn't have that same baggage. So,
which is not to say the Kennedy name was benefiting him. It's wild how it's wild how little mileage he got out of the greatest name in probably the last century of politics.
Because I think people hear that guy and they go, "Oh, he's insane. He's the guy who had whale juice."
And no one cares about the Kennedys
spilling
anymore.
Onto. I mean. Every time his daughter was quoted, this is being unearthed because I guess she's dating Ben Affleck now, but that he apparently, when he was in Hyannis, which is in Massachusetts, when she was 6, her dad chopped off the head of a whale that washed up on Squaw Island in Hyannisport. Due to RFK Jr.'s love of studying animal skulls and skeletons, they then strapped the dead whale's head to the car and spent 5 hours driving it to their home. Every time we accelerated on the highway, whale juice would pour into the windows of the car, and it was the rankest thing on the planet, Kennedy said. We all had plastic bags over our heads with mouth holes cut out, and people on the highway were giving us the finger. But that was just normal day-to-day stuff for us. So, again, if you're trying to distance yourself from a label of weird,
yeah, I mean,
does this guy's endorsement help?
No, definitely not. I mean, to be honest with this and like the roadkill thing in Central Park, less troubling to me than the measles outbreak in American Samoa that his free speech activism on vaccines created. But
right.
Yeah.
I was just fascinated with whale anatomy.
Here is his sister talking with Jen Psaki, and basically the entire family, also most of the other siblings, put out a letter, I think, distancing themselves from this.
I think this is really the stakes this November couldn't be higher, which is exactly why my whole family will be fighting so hard to reelect Kamala Harris and Coach Waltz, who've been champions for the values that my family has fought for years. Donald Trump is the polar opposite. He's a threat to the most basic freedoms that are core to who we are as Americans, the right for women to control our bodies, the right to live in communities safe from gun violence, to love who you love. And I think if my dad were alive today, the real Robert Kennedy would have detested almost everything Donald Trump represents. His lying, his selfishness, his rage, his cynicism, hatred, racism, fascist sympathies, deliberate misinformation about vaccines, criminal felony convictions. Daddy was the Attorney General of the United States. His rape of E. Jean Carroll, his contempt for the poor and suffering, for ethics, democracy, healing, his cruel sneering at human rights for suffering people in America and around the world. And these are the causes that was loved so passionately by the real Robert Kennedy. So I'm outraged and disgusted by my brother's gaudy and obscene embrace of Donald Trump. And I completely out and separate and dissociate myself from Robert Kennedy Jr. in this flagrant and inexplicable effort to desecrate and trample and set fire to my father's memory.
I mean, look, I can't imagine what that's like, especially because, RFK, the original RFK, as Attorney General had his issues, but he became in 1968 a candidate that was much more connected to, the civil rights movement, to labor unions, and really, I think, was exciting during that time period and an avatar for what modern liberalism meant, I guess, in 20th century America.
And then he took a lot of the anti-war movement too, which originally I think Eugene McCarthy brought onto the scene. But yeah, he capitalized on it and was the sort of main champion of it that led LBJ to drop out of the race.
And the problem for RFK here is that he says he's going to withdraw from the swing states, but it seems like at least in 2 of the 3 where he was on the ballot, Michigan, Nevada, and North Carolina, he's going to be unable to do so. Michigan says it's too late for Kennedy to withdraw. The deadline has passed, and in Nevada as well. And then in Pennsylvania, he just filed. We'll see what the status of that is. But this is both incredibly cynical because he wants some sort of cabinet position, and he's run out of money. It's a desecration of the Kennedy legacy, according to his siblings. And it's also just poorly executed because he's not going to be able to withdraw from at least 2 of those most important states where Trump is really panicking, I think, right now. So that's that.
Be hilarious if if those psychos caused Trump the election. It's caused some very funny infighting among some of the worst people going right now.
I would love it. I would love nothing more.
Hey folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.